you for joining us at this regular meeting of the Madera City Council. Today is May 20th, 2020, 6 p.m. And this meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. City Council meeting will be live streamed on the city's website, and members of the public may participate in the meeting remotely through an electronic meeting via phone by dialing 669-900-6833 and enter ID number 9322-3235-083#, followed by *9 on your phone if you wish to speak. Other comments will be accepted via email at citycouncilpubliccomment@madera.gov. With that, Alicia, if you would do roll call, please.
Mayor Medellin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Gallegos.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Montes.
Here.
Councilmember Robinson.
Present.
Councilmember Hawley.
Present.
Thank you so much, Alicia. The invocation this evening will be led by our own Councilman Donald Hawley. And then immediately after that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able to stand for the invocation, please do so.
Thank everyone for standing. May we bow our heads. Most Lord, gracious Father, again, we come thank you for the staff. We thank you for our council. We thank you for our city of Madera. And our prayer tonight, God, we want to thank you for the incredible gift of your Son, Jesus Christ, through his death and resurrection. We have been set forth from death and given eternal life. Our salvation sets us apart in the midst of darkness. Thank you for your overcoming darkness. Oh Lord, may we live our lives shining brightly to bring your glory and draw us others to you. In Jesus Christ's name, we say, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Councilman. If you'll remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Moving into the approval of the agenda, I'll ask my colleagues if there's any changes or additions to this evening's agenda. I believe we do have before you do that, please, I believe we have a late distribution announcement from our city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, members of the public are advised that less than 72 hours prior to this evening's meeting, item D6 was distributed to the council after the agenda packet was finalized. Members of the public wishing to view or obtain a copy of this item may do so by visiting the City of Madera meeting and agenda page located on our website.
Thank you, Alicia. With that announcement, I'll entertain a motion for approval of agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the agenda with the said announcement.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by Councilman Hawley to approve the agenda with said announcement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously and takes us right into public comment. First 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers will be asked but are not required to identify themselves and state the subject of their comments. If the subject isn't to hold the comment until that item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held on matter discussed, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time. I do not believe there's anybody on the phone. I will ask our city clerk if there has been any email public comment requests.
No, Mayor, I have not received any public comment requests.
Seeing none, hearing none, presentation this evening will be from the Public Health Department, Ms. Sarah Boss, giving us an update on the COVID-19.
Mr.
Sarah
Mayor,
with us?
You're cutting out.
Yeah, it does sound kind of choppy, so I'm not sure if it was you, Mr. Mayor, or if we have this, Mark, can you?
It sounds like it's a connection issue. Do we have someone that can step in for him?
Mr. Vice Chair? Or Vice,
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, that's fine. That's okay. As soon as we can get the mayor back on, we'll make sure that happens.
Okay,
Are you back, senor?
my apologies. Can you guys hear me and see me?
Yes. I think you were introducing Sarah.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, Mayor. And I just sent Sarah a text message. So she should be joining us any second. But if you wouldn't mind, Mayor, if we can potentially come back to that item just for, just in the spirit of time and to be respectful of everyone's time. Because I don't see her on.
Yeah.
Mayor? Okay, so it looks like the mayor froze. Looks like he may be online. Mayor Pro Tem, would it be appropriate for me to jump down to item 1 under introductions?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. So it is my pleasure, council and community members, to introduce one of the newest people to be joining our team. We have Gabby Salazar. She's actually on our Zoom meeting. Gabby started with the city. Gabby, I believe you're going on 5 weeks now?
Yes, a little more than a month.
So a little bit more than a month. Gabby is an admin analyst here in the city manager's office. So we are extremely happy and pleased to have a Madeiran be working for the city. Gabby attended high school here locally in Madera. After graduating from Madera High, she attended Fresno State, where she earned her degree in social work. She's worked at a couple of local nonprofits, including CAPMC here in Madera, and most recently she worked for the Fresno Housing Authority. So we're extremely thrilled that she decided to join us, and that grew our team from 2 people to 3 people here in the city manager's office. So if things appear that they're moving a little smoother now, I would love to take credit, but it's really because of Gabby. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gabby. And Gabby, if you would like to say a couple of words.
Yes, so thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. It is a true pleasure coming back to my hometown and getting put to work here at the City of Madera. I look forward to working with all of you guys and know that it is my pleasure to be back in the City of Madera.
Well, we thank you for joining us.
And thank you very much. And Mayor, it looks like the mayor's logging back on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you still can, Mayor.
My apologies. Let me get rid of my other device. Give me 1 second. Are you able to hear me?
You have to shut down the other, you have 2 meetings going on, Mr. Mayor. You have to shut down.
Mr. Mayor, you'll need to shut down, or you'll need to mute 1 device. There we go.
Oh, how about now?
Better.
Yes, better.
Perfect. Mr. Mayor, can you hear us?
I did for just a moment. Can you hear me?
Yes. We just finished the introduction of Gabriela. And we were going to move on to item A, workshops. That's where we left off.
Health Department.
Mayor Pro Tem, maybe it'd be wise for you to continue with the agenda.
Yeah, we could do that. As soon as the mayor can get back on, then we'll move on from there. Arnoldo, has Sarah come back?
So unfortunately, I just left Sarah a voicemail and I sent her a text. I have not heard from her. I heard from her about an hour ago, so I know that she was aware of it, but I'm not too sure with everything that's happening if something else is requiring her immediate attention. So I will continue to reach out to Sarah to see. Oh, actually, speaking of Sarah, here she is. Perfect timing. All right, Sarah.
Sorry for being a few minutes late, juggling some things. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to tell you probably again, you probably have heard that Madera County has received a variance from the state of California for us to be able to move more quickly through phase 2. And this is also being referred to as stage 2.5. That basically means the same thing. I don't want that to confuse anyone. And so that is allowing us to be able to open additional businesses who have done a risk assessment and planning to be able to provide a safe environment for their customers and for their employees. So up until this point, of course, there were essential businesses that are allowed to be open. And a few weeks ago, the state opened retail businesses for curbside pickup or delivery. And now we're able to add several others as allowed to be open. And so those include retail stores for in-store purchases, as well as dine-in restaurants, offices that in the past were deemed non-essential, as well as in our outdoor museums, which there is one in the city of Chowchilla that I'm aware of. It also allows us to eventually open the flea market, but that is slated for a later time. And there is a distinction with the flea market in particular, because we're working very closely with that business owner and with the fairgrounds, because it has so much potential for lots of attendance and it's more complicated in terms of planning. So we at the Public Health Department are very active in planning with them to ensure that it's a safe environment for residents. Other businesses that are on the approved list are, we have tools available for them. We've talked about those tools in the past and they are available on our website. They include the business checklist poster that many of you have seen. Businesses have been putting them up. Those posters, of course, provide instructions to customers about what the recommendations are from the health officer, and also give the opportunity for the business to communicate their actions in creating a low-risk, safe environment for customers or other patrons. And in conjunction with that, on our website, there is a business planning tool with very specific details that businesses are able to write out and put together. For example, if on the business checklist poster, a business identifies that they're going to be disinfecting surfaces, the business planning tool has that same option, but it gives space for the business in a fillable document to be able to identify the specifics related to that. What are the surfaces? Where are they located? Who's responsible for keeping them sanitized and how often? Who is responsible for purchasing the supplies to be able to sanitize those surfaces, and where are they stored? So it's the very specific tools that a business would need to be able to implement their plan, communicate that plan with employees, and maintain it over time. So we expect that businesses are going to be using these tools to create safe plans, communicate with their customers, but it is not required that they submit those to the Department of Public Health. If they would like technical assistance, if they have questions, they'd like us to help them troubleshoot an issue that they might be having, we're here and available for technical assistance, but there is not a requirement for businesses to submit those plans. It's also important to note that schools were listed as a part of stage 2. At this time, we do not recommend that schools are opening as state guidance has not yet been provided. We feel that it's important that schools move together and expect that detailed guidance will be coming from the state with regards to how to open schools safely. So we anticipate that that will happen in the fall.
You full? You want me to eat the rest of this, or you gonna eat it?
All right.
Are you back on, sir?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My apologies. I must be an internet connection. But yes, I'm back on.
Okay.
Great. So I just want to point to where the tools are on our website. Our website, of course, is maderacounty.com/COVID-19. And on that main page, many of you have visited there before. Of course, all of our data is there. And there's a big banner picture that says Reopening Madera County. If you click on that, it's going to take you to lots of information and tools. Oh, there we go. Thank you. And so if you click on Reopening Madera County, it shows kind of what the different stages are, as well as a chart that really lays out which businesses are open and which businesses are not yet open. And then there are tools. So you'll see the business checklist poster there. The planning tool is in the list. And also you can click on the business page, and there's a lot more information there specifically for businesses. Some of it is repeating, but others, there's very specific guidance that the state has provided for specific sectors. And it all comes from that one link that's listed there, CDPH Industry Guidance. When you go to that location, there's the tools for every type of sector that is allowed to be open in stage 1 and stage 2, so that as counties receive variances, there's specific guidance located at this website. I do want to point out, you'll see the picture that's there, that's actually a link to a video. The video is a safety officer tutorial, and we really encourage businesses, city departments, every type of agency to identify a safety officer for their business, their agency. And pictured with me is Sergio Garcia. He's our safety officer at Department of Public Health during this event. He does an excellent job, and he walks us through kind of the tasks and responsibilities of a safety officer, and we highly recommend that role for every location. Are there any questions?
Any questions of Ms. Boss? You may have to speak up, since I am now conducting the meeting from my cell phone and not everybody fits on my screen. Once again, any questions of Ms. Boss? Sarah, thank you very much for this update. We seem to be moving in the right direction. I'm very pleased, as I'm speaking for the community when they say we're very pleased, as we're cautiously optimistic and moving forward, and let's hope that we do not look back. But thank you so much for this update.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too, Sarah. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Now, I believe as I was cutting in and out, we have done the introductions of Ms. Salazar. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, welcome, Gabby, very much. My apologies for missing that, but welcome to the team, and we look forward to working together. Moving on to the consent calendar, matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, a member of the public or a member of the council may request an item to be removed from the consent calendar, and it will be considered separately. Once again, if you don't mind verbally speaking up, is there any of my colleagues wishing to pull or further discuss any consent calendar item? Hearing none, I'll call for action on the consent calendar.
So move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Hawley and seconded by Councilman Robinson to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? It sounds like that carried unanimously. Moving on to public hearings, item C1. This is a public hearing regarding proposed annexation number 9 to the Community Facilities District number 2005-01, which is the Sherwood Apartments, and related actions. Item C11 is we have two resolutions. So I am now going to open the public hearing regarding the annexation of territory to CFD number 2005-01.
I declare that the notice of public hearing was published on May 2nd, 2020.
Thank you so much, Lisa. With that, I'll ask for staff to please proceed with the staff report.
Good evening, council, members of the public. Just 1 second as I get situated.
No problem.
Before you is annexation number 9. The project entails the Sherwood Apartments, which is the project encumbers a 16-unit apartment complex on roughly 1.4 acres of property. The project was initially approved by the Planning Commission on November 12th of 2019. The project was before the City Council on April 15th as part of the initiating process to the annexation. At that hearing, that meeting, the council took 2 actions on 2 resolutions. The first one was adopting a boundary map for annexation number 9, and 2, declaring the city's intent to authorize the annexation of the subject property with a specific election date set for May 20th. Approval or proceedings of this annexation would make it the 9th annexation into CFD 2005-01. Before you have 4 actions. The first one would be authorizing the annexation of the territory and authorizing the levy of a special tax on the subject property. The second one would be calling a special election, conducting a special election and certifying the results, and finally making certain findings and certifying the results of the election and adding the territory into CFD 2005-01. Staff recommends completion of the election and adoption of these specified resolutions necessary for the annexation of the territory into CFD 2005-01. That completes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Orozco. I appreciate that. I will now ask if there's any of my colleagues that has any questions for Mr. Orozco regarding this item.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, Councilman Hawley.
Yes, I was wondering if we're going to accept this tonight on approving the tax, why would we do that before we hear from the voters?
We actually are going to conduct that vote here next.
So we're going to vote? Oh, they're going to vote there tonight?
A ballot was sent out to the property owner or owners, and they will be
Okay.
able to vote on this. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Alicia, I will ask our city clerk if there's any written communications regarding this particular item.
I declare no written protests were received by the city, that there are less than 12 registered voters within the Community Facilities District, that written consents to holding the Community Facilities District elections today have been received from all landowners within the proposed annexation number 9, and that I concur with the holding of the special election of annexation number 9.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I appreciate that. And now I will close the public hearing and once again bring it back to council for any last minute discussion or comments. Hearing none, I will now call for the question for items 1 and 2 under C1.
Was that to request a motion to adopt, Mayor?
Yes.
So move to approve item. Second.
The motion was to approve under item C1, resolution number 1 and resolution number 2 from Councilman Hawley and seconded by Councilman Robinson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hearing none. Moving on to that motion passed unanimously. So now I will now ask the city clerk to call upon you to conduct the election.
Thank you, Mayor. One ballot has been received. I now close the election and announce the results. As to annexing the property under annexation number 9 to CFD number 2005-01, have 1 yes vote. I declare the annexation passes unanimously. Council, you may proceed to consider adoption of the resolutions declaring the election results.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for that. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution declaring the results?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item C4, adopting the resolution with the results.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by Councilman Robinson, I believe, to approve item. Did you say?
Item C14, adopting the resolution making the certain findings.
Thank you so much. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion to adopt resolution certifying the results of the election and adding the territory in annexation number 9 to CFD 2005-01 has passed unanimously. Thank you all very, very much for that. I appreciate it. And thank you for your patience with me. I'm trying to get back online here soon. Moving on to item D1. This is award of agreement with Synagro WWT Inc. for sludge hauling and disposal services from the wastewater treatment plant at $41 per ton plus monthly container fees of $800 each. I believe Mr. Foss will be giving this report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Let me try to share my screen here. So, okay. You guys see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Let's get it started. Okay, Mayor, members of council, I'll keep this kind of short and sweet for everybody here. So what we're going to be talking about today is basically everybody's favorite subject, what happens after you flush and where it goes and what we do with it. So I'm not going to even try to pronounce the first one. I think it's, well, I said I wasn't going to try it, so I'm not going to try it, but you see it on your screen. It goes through a 5-step process once it gets to the wastewater treatment plant. And we take this solid, it's called a solid, but it comes there basically as almost a liquid form, and we make it more of a solid, and then eventually that has to be hauled off. What we're going to be talking about today is how it gets there and what we have to pay for and why we have to pay for it to be hauled off. So we'll talk briefly about each step. The first step Did I get stuck? There we go. These are that term digesters, and this digests the sludge. So it's a biological process, and it takes microorganisms and breaks down the organic material in the absence of oxygen. You can see on the first picture there, we have two of these rather large containers, and it basically is working like your stomach would work, and it breaks down the material into more of a solid material. We have two of those tanks. Each one holds just over 250,000 gallons of water, and we can digest. It takes about 18 days to digest it when it's full, down to what you see on the right, that smaller picture, where it's more of a solid, but it looks like sludge, and that's why we're calling it sludge removal. The next step is we take it to these centrifuges. It's a dewatering centrifuge. These basically spin really, really fast, about 3,000 revolutions per minute, and it separates more water from the sludge. These things can process or dewater up to 100 gallons per minute of digested sludge. One thing that's kind of unique out there water treatment plant is, if you haven't been out there, I mean, the facility itself is massive, and the amount of material that they process every day is quite incredible. So they're doing 100 gallons per minute of sludge and dewatering it even further. Once they do that, they have the biosolids, and you can see now we're dealing more with almost looks like soil, and we have dry biosolids. We generate about 190 to 210 tons of biosolids per month. So that is a lot of solid waste. We have to haul that off, and that's what we'll be talking about, or that's what we're discussing today. If we don't, then we're knee deep in you know what. So we have to get this stuff removed. When you go back to our resolution here, it's $800 each for the storage containers. So we rent the containers from the company, and then they haul it off for $41 a ton. And the RFP was put out for posting. Was sent out on, or posted on 1/13/20, advertised and sent out to 8 different companies. We only received one response back. It was from Synagro, who's our current service provider, and we are happy with them as well. It was a rather large increase of 28%. Now, even with the large increase of 28%, it's at $41. That's still lower than our previous bid from 3 years ago for our next highest, which was 45. Does that make sense? So the next lowest bid last time was 45.79, or for 5 years ago, a ton. And even with the increase at $41 per ton, it's still lower than the previous bid from several years ago. I just posted this because, as you guys know, I'm fairly new to the seat. And when I had to do this presentation, I was fairly unfamiliar with the whole process. And I wanted to give a shout out to Peter, who walked me through the whole process, explained it to me, actually wrote up quite a bit of what you saw here today for us so that we could go over it. And he is one of our lead workers out at the wastewater treatment plant. But I didn't want to steal his thunder. Everything I presented today was in thanks to him for showing me all the ropes out there. So we're seeking direction today and looking for approval with the contract of Synagro, or another option would be to reopen the RFP for additional bids. And that's it. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or try to anyway.
Mr. Mayor, are you on?
He probably want to take a break with that wastewater.
I didn't want to hear about the waste treatment plant.
He went to his treatment plant.
So, all right. So, are there any questions? Anyone from the public want to make any questions or make any comments? Is the mayor back? Mark, is the mayor back?
I'm trying to unmute him. It looks like he's frozen.
I motion to approve D1 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion to approve in a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Good job, Daniel.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm looking for where I'm at.
Item D2.
Yeah, I just got lost here. Item D2 is in front of us. Construction of a traffic signal at the intersection of Howard Road and Granada Drive for TS17. Is this a report, Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
This will actually be engineering department, and Mr. Victor Aldama from our department will be presenting D2, and that'll be a lead into D3. They both go hand in hand as their traffic signal. Victor will also lead into D4 as well as a project that he was working on and managing. And I'll let Victor take it from there.
All right. Hello. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and members of the public. Good to see you all again. And let me just begin with sharing my screen. Let's see. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Victor, you need to change there you go.
Yep. So I'm here tonight to present 3 council items, as Keith mentioned. I'm going to be presenting item D2, item D3, and item D4. I'll first begin with item D2, which will be Howard Road, installation of a new traffic signal at Howard Road and Granada Drive, which I served as a project manager for that project. And, oh, that was the wrong slide. Sorry about that. Which I served as the project manager for that project. The second one will be the installation of a traffic signal at Howard Road and Westbury Boulevard. That project was managed by one of our engineers here in the office, which is Randy Bell. He'll be available to answer any questions regarding that project at the end of the presentation. So let's get started first. It's going to be the traffic signal at the intersection of Howard Road and Granada Drive, also known as city project number TS17. I'm going to briefly start with a quick background about the project and history, which consists of this project was advertised back in April of this year and opened bids in April 30th, 2020. There were a total of 6 contractors that submitted bids for this project. Bush Engineering, Inc. submitted the lowest responsive and responsible bid. Okay, moving on to the funding source for this project. The project's currently funded with Traffic Signal Development Impact Fee and Measure T RTP3R account. There is approximately $376,000 being funded from Development Impact Fee and $224,000 from the Measure T account. The total anticipated cost for this project, once completed, it's going to be roughly around $600,000. Staff is recommending tonight to award the contract to Bush Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $499,775. So if the project is awarded during tonight's meeting, the anticipated completion date for this project, it's roughly around November of this year. Okay, here's a quick project map representing the location. As you can see, it's Howard Road and Granada Drive. The project scope will consist of installing a new traffic signal, installation of new access ramps, installation of pavement striping and pavement markers, relocation of existing storm drain facility, and of course, installation of asphalt concrete improvements. Okay, moving on now. In order to fully fund the construction portion of this project, staff is recommending a funding amendment to appropriate roughly $80,000 to the project from our Measure T account, which is already included in our staff report. Concluding to this project, we are recommending that the City Council awards the project to Bush Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $499,775. So I'll be opening it up for questions for this project. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Victor, I have a question.
Okay.
If this completion date is November, when would we start the actual date for the construction of this traffic signal?
So as soon as council approves, it usually takes roughly about a month.
Okay.
To a month and a half to start construction by going through pre-construction meeting, issuing a notice to proceed, and letting the contractor submit all their submittals and approving them before they start construction.
They're kind of
roughly within a month. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mayor, do we have you back?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My apologies once again. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for taking over. I appreciate that. Where exactly are we?
We're at award of contract for Howard Road and Granada Drive traffic signal. Item D2.
D2, and I saw that Councilwoman Gallegos had a question. So are we in the question phase of it right now with the council?
Correct.
Great. Any other council member with a question? Do we have any written communications, Alicia, regarding this particular item?
We do not.
Thank you very much. So as far as public comment, seeing none, hearing none, if there's no further comments or questions, I'll call for action on this item.
I so move to approve D2 as presented.
Second.
Thank you so much. It's been moved by Councilwoman Gallegos and seconded by Councilman Montes to approve item D2. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for
Moving on to item D3. This is construction of traffic signal at the intersection of Howard Road and Westbury Boulevard, which is city project number TS19. Again, my apologies. I'm having to reach over to a different computer to look at the agenda.
Yes. So again, as I mentioned earlier, this project was managed by one of our engineers, Randy Bell. He's currently here. He's currently here to answer any question at the end of the presentation. So again, more good news, more construction to come. So this item D3 is going to be consisting of award a contract for traffic signal at the intersection of Howard Road and Westbury Boulevard. As the mayor said, also known as city project number TS19. A brief history about the project. This was advertised roughly around the same time as the Granada Drive traffic signal, March 25th, and open bids in April 21st, 2020. There were 3 bids received as part of this project. Avison Construction, Inc. submitted the lowest responsive and responsible bid. The project currently has 3 funding sources, one of them being CMAQ at about $328,000. Second funding source comes from traffic signal diff account at $126,000. And lastly, from the Measure T account at roughly about $150,000. The total anticipated cost.
Can't see that.
We can't see it. Oh, what? Okay, let me try this again. It was working just fine earlier, right?
Yep.
Okay. Is it working now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. All right, I'll move on to the location where I was at. Okay, again, I'm going to repeat. This project is currently funded with 3 different accounts. One of them being CMAQ at $328,000. Second funding source comes from traffic signal diff account at $126,000. And lastly, from Measure T account at about $150,000. The total anticipated cost for this project is roughly at $600,000 as well. Again, we are recommending that the council awards the project to Avison Construction in the amount of $503,385. Same as Granada and Howard traffic signal, if awarded tonight, roughly the rough estimated completion date will be around November.
I have a question.
Okay.
Councilman Holly, why is there a difference in the cost? Is it because there's two different contractors?
The cost difference wasn't substantial. It was roughly about $5,000 difference. And that's very typical in the bidding world, 5 to 10% difference. It's not very unusual. Yeah.
I'll add a little bit. They are two different projects, and they're bid at different times. Each time you bid, there's an expectation that there's a little bit of difference in the market. These were bid relatively close to the same time period, which possibly explains why they came in at about the same amount. But between the two, each of those has a fixed improvement associated with it, which is a traffic signal itself. But each of them has different surface improvements. We've added on additional paving to both of those to accommodate the approaches to the intersection. Go ahead and line them up the way we would like. And it's those areas where we would have expected some substantial differences, because I think there was a little bit more pavement on one versus the other. But there's really no predicting whether they come in close. But given the time frame, I'm not surprised for these two.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Any other questions from council? Did that complete the?
No, I'll continue
sorry, okay.
and just finish it. Yeah.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Vic.
So here represents a location map. Again, it's going to be right at Howard Road and Westbury Boulevard. As Keith mentioned, this project will consist of a new traffic signal, new access ramp, a little bit more asphalt than the other project, as well as new striping improvements. Okay, again, in order to fully fund this project, we are also requesting a funding amendment to appropriate about $150,000 from the Measure T account to this project. Okay, to conclude, we are currently recommending that the City Council award the project to Avison Construction, Inc. in the amount of $503,385. Now I'm opening it up for questions.
Okay, Victor, thank you very much for that. Any questions to Mr. Aldama regarding this particular item? I have a question, Victor. My apologies. Okay. Regarding the last project and this project, there's on this particular one, there's 3 areas of undeveloped property, or actually 2 areas of undeveloped, maybe a third. If development occurs in that area, are they responsible for any reimbursements to the city for signalization?
I will turn that up to Keith for regarding that. So
traffic signals at arterial by arterial, arterial by collector, and collector by collector are covered by the city's impact fee program. As such, the program assists in paying for the signals. It would be ideal if the program could pay for all of them, but as you see, there's supplementation. We had CMAQ paying for one of them and DIF paying for another. But getting to your question, the developments on the corners will pay their proportionate share towards the signals through the traffic signal impact fee itself.
So there will be a portion to be paid. Their fair share.
Their fair share, yes.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Any other questions from council?
Yes, this is Mayor Pro Tem. There are 3 developments on that corner, right? There's only really one bear lot.
Which corner are we talking about? At Westbury, of course, yes. There's one development. There's actually 2 developments. There's one on the southwest corner, which I believe is agricultural supply type business, and then on the northwest there's a gas station.
And then there's I don't know what that is. They used to call them Quonset huts back in the day on the southeast side.
Yes, there is I think that's the correct term, Quonset hut on that corner. It's not being used for anything. It was proposed for development maybe 5 to 7 years ago. It didn't go anywhere at the time. They were looking at building a brand new gas station.
At that old Monty's mini market?
Monty was, this is Monty's place there that you're looking at. He was the former owner of a place over there off of Howard Road.
But the one across the street as well, wasn't it?
He was the one who was looking at developing the area where the Quonset hut was. Yes.
Yeah, that building there.
Yes, that was his proposal.
And I believe he's also the owner of that home you see there to the left, the northeast corner, that yellow home there as well. It's all the same owner.
Yeah, it could be.
Yes. Any other questions regarding this particular item? I don't see any participants on the line. Any email questions, Alicia?
We have received none, Mayor.
Thank you so much. So with that, I'll bring it back to council for action.
So move to approve.
To approve D3 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Gallegos and seconded by Councilman Montes, I believe, to approve item D3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Victor and Keith.
No problem.
Moving on to item D4. This is a sidewalk and safety improvements on Sunset Avenue between Pine Street and Doubletree Way.
That is correct. So let me start with, let's see. Y'all able to see my screen?
I see, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, more good news. So lastly, the last item I'll be presenting is item D4. This will be for construction acceptance for the Sunset Sidewalk Avenue project and safety improvements. I'll be moving along. Quick history about the project. This project opened bids back in July of 2019. The project was awarded at the August 7th council meeting to Clean Cut Landscape at an amount of $408,000, $341.05. The construction phase of the project, which was funded with $404,000 of HSIP funds and $131,000 of local transportation funds. The improvements relating to the project consist of the following: sidewalk improvement, new drive approaches, American with Disability Act ramp improvements, new pedestrian median refuges in front of the school at Thomas Jefferson between Pine Street, Rotan Avenue, Fairview, and Fairview Avenue. The project also consisted of replacement of traffic striping and markings. There were a total of 3 change orders processed as part of this construction project that equal to about 15.53% of the total contract. Okay, in addition to the acceptance of the project, staff is also requesting that council adopts an amendment, adopts a resolution approving an increase in construction contingency from $15 to 16% for the sidewalk project. Reason the addition is being requested is that as part of the HSIP fund, if the city does not spend any of all of the contingency fund, any funds remaining in the account would be left, would be returned back to the funding source. So in this case, it would be going back to Caltrans. So given the situation, staff moved along into constructing even more sidewalk as part of this project to fully spend all of the HSIP funds. Just wanted to give a background of that. So, here's the project map of the project. As you can see, there's roughly about a mile length of sidewalk that was built as part of this project. It closed all the gap closure along Sunset Avenue from Doubletree Way all the way down to Pine Street. The items in red represents new sidewalk, drive approaches, new ramps, and the items in green represents the new pedestrian median refuges. So lastly, I wanted to share some project pictures relating this project. As you can see over here, that's all the way towards the west near Doubletree Way. So more pictures of the new sidewalk. More pictures of the new sidewalk with nice landscaping. And a image of the new pedestrian median refuges. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be opening it up for questions, so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. Hello. I don't know if the mayor's on or not.
Here I am. I'm sorry, Mr. Councilman. Please go right ahead with your question.
No worries. Well, it's more of a comment. I wanted to thank staff for putting this together. Certainly, a lot of the constituents in my area appreciate the sidewalks. I go through them every day, and you know, I've walked on them as well. You did a great job, so I wanted to thank you all for the hard work and the great effort in putting these sidewalks together. It's not only in my side, western side of the Sunset, but also for Thomas Jefferson and all those islands in the middle. Certainly are excellent job for you and your staff. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for those comments. Anybody else?
I have a question, Mr. Councilman, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilman Hawley.
This question is for Keith. Keith.
Yes.
Now that we got these ADAs on Yosemite and Gateway, on Yosemite and Gateway, is that going to stop that flooding right there in front of the Chevron station?
No, the ADA improvements won't touch that. It may provide a safer path, but no, it won't help that.
So that means all that water is going to get on top of that pretty yellow and fade out in no time.
Yes, but we repaint about every 2 years, I believe, is the schedule.
Okay, I was concerned about that corner.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Any other questions or concerns regarding the sidewalk and safety improvements? I'll ask our city clerk if there has been any email communications on this particular item. I'll take that as a no.
Unreceived, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no further comments, public or otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for the two parts on item D4. This is adopt a minute order and also adopt the resolution.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
I said, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item D4 1 and 2 as presented.
Second.
It has been properly moved and by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by, I believe, Councilman Hawley to approve item D4. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Thanks again, Victor. Love all the good news. Don't go far.
Not a problem. There's more to come, of course.
Item D5 is a contract with HDL companies to provide financial consulting services. Again, two parts to this particular item. I believe, Mr. Sanchez, will you be giving this report?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. You're on.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you and to provide some information on consulting services. Before you, we're requesting that council approve a contract with HDL, and I'll provide some insight and some information on this. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So a quick background, Avenue Insights and Analytics, known as Avenue, has provided consulting services for the last 25 years for the city of Madera, and we're very grateful for all the services that they provided. They have done a good job. In the wake of COVID-19, there's been a lot of uncertainty, and very different than other times, such a drastic drop in sales taxes, the closure, and of course the high unemployment. We were trying to get information, and HDL has provided a lot of insight free of cost already to various cities and to the city of Madera as well. With many years of services from inside, the city manager and myself thought that it would be prudent to look at other options and change it a little bit. And so that's part of the recommendation, is that we change from Avenue to HDL. The HDL companies, it's employee-owned company. I was doing a little bit of research on them, and they're very proactive. They have most of the customers in California. They provide sales and tax consulting services, and most of the customers, over 300 customers, I believe, in the state of California. They have excellent reviews throughout in municipal world, and they're very well known with excellent reputation. So what do we need them? We need them for sales and tax projections. They can also help us with collections and increase credibility for the financial statements, and they also help us with the budget. A quick comparison and overview between Avenue and HDL. We expect to have some slight increases on cost. As you can see, the consulting hourly rates comparisons, the IT support, and you can see the areas. You can also see the sales tax analytics and reporting comparison. And it's comparable, and we believe that we've been very impressed with what they have provided so far. Just so you can get a perspective how much these are the payments that we made to Avenue Consulting Services, and by year, and you can see, just to give you a perspective on how we spent. Not the whole thing is related to sales and taxes. Some of it relates to business and other special projects that they provide services on. This is on average the cost. This is the 5-year average, $18,000, and compared to the sales tax, this is about 1/10 of 1%. If we compare it against the collections of sales taxes. So quick overview on their side. They have over 99% client retention. They help with, as I mentioned, sales and use tax, economic development projects, the cannabis consultant, and you will hear on the next portion by city manager coming up. And so they provide property tax and businesses and licenses in all those areas as well. So a quick overview of the general fund operating revenues. This is from the last fiscal year that we closed as audited from 2018-2019, and here we have a breakdown of the revenues. And if we combine the sales taxes with the Measure K sales taxes, it is $13.4 million, and it represents 43% of the total revenues of general fund. The total revenues is $31.5 million, as I mentioned, broken down by this accounts. So this is a significant source. This is the biggest source for funding public safety and general fund expenditures. And as such, we need the right analysis, we need the right projections, and it's very insightful that we get that information on a timely basis. And they really have come through during the COVID times as they provided tons of insight already. So the staff recommends that the contract be approved, and also that the council authorize HDL, the city manager, and the finance director to have access to the sales and use tax records on file with the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. So those are the two resolutions that we're recommending that council approve. And with that, I'll leave it for any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanchez. I appreciate that report. Any questions from council?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Of course, Councilman Montes.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Roger, thank you for that presentation. So I'm looking at, so the base fee is going to be $8,400, and we're going to get certain services with that contract. And specifically for the consulting, what services would they be providing under those specific hourly rates above what they're already going to be providing? So I apologize if I missed that, but I know you put the.
Are you talking about these ones?
We can't see your screen anymore.
Oh, apologize.
So the principal, IT support, senior analyst, and analyst. Yeah. So what? So the bottom half, what specific tasks would they be charging us in addition? Because it looks like we have certain functions built in, right?
Yes, we certainly have. They provide the reports, detailed reports, and we also have meetings with the principal. Maybe if we do have a representative from HDL, if he could jump in and answer this question as well.
Certainly, Roger. Can you hear me? This is Wayne Padilla.
Yeah, Wayne, we can hear you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for being with us.
You're very welcome. So what tends to happen if the city needs a particular report run that we're not able to pull directly from the sales tax database, which is pretty rare, then we would propose a fee for generating that report. But in my 5 years with the company, so far, I've not been involved with any clients that needed to be charged the hourly rate for assistance. Where this might come into play, though, is if there's a special economic study that's needed to be done, assistance relative to development agreements, things of that nature, or special analytical reports related to a special project. At that point, we might need to charge the additional fee, but again, it's not something that you're going to see on an annual basis. And in the 150 clients that I work with, I've not been assessing that fee in 5 years.
Okay, thank you. And just again, there's a lot built in already. So I just was curious about a specific situation, but that makes sense. A project specific analysis of industry analysis or something that so we help us make a better decision. Thank you, Mr. Padilla.
You're very welcome. One thing, if I may add, Mayor,
of course,
one thing that sets us apart from our competitor is that there are 3 principals assigned to every client. That assures that you always have access to someone in a timely manner. We're all either CPAs or CPAs and former city managers. So we know what you do, we know why you do it, and we understand the importance of the data. And you don't need to explain that to us.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. I appreciate those comments. Any
Mr.
other
Mayor,
questions? Yes, Councilman Hawley.
To the council, I'd like to everybody to know Wayne Padilla used to be one of our past city finance director. We do appreciate you coming on board and helping our city along these lines. I know you and I have talked about this a while back. Glad to see that your company is now assisting us. Thank you.
Thank you. We're grateful for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Councilman, for those comments. Anyone else? I'll ask our city clerk if anyone has emailed in any written correspondence for this particular item.
No public comments received.
Great, Alicia. Thank you very much. With that, I'll bring it back to council for item D5. Recommendation is to adopt a resolution and also approve a resolution authorizing the examination of sales use and transaction tax records.
Mr. Mayor, that also approved D5 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Hawley and seconded by Councilman Montes to approve item D5 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. And that takes us right into item D6. This too is a contract with HDL companies to provide consulting services relating to regulatory ordinances, taxation ordinance, and related regulations for cannabis. Once again, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm going to be taking this item.
Okay.
Arnoldo Rodriguez, City Manager for the City of Madera. Let me swap a couple of things, and is it safe to assume that everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the item before you this evening is to award HDL the same contract was previously discussed in item D5. However, this is for a single subject item. This is to help the city prepare an ordinance and a ballot measure for the November ballot, specifically for cannabis. The other contract that was discussed on item D5, that's an ongoing contract where they would help the city for an extended period of time. And that's for the analysis of making sure that we're receiving proper funding specific to tax revenue. Whereas this one right here is specific to cannabis. So this item, the contract does have a sunset clause in it in terms of the roles and responsibilities of HDL and the city. So the council may recall that it established a cannabis ad hoc committee comprised of the mayor, council members Garcia, and council member Rodriguez. During that time, we discussed a couple of different options for cannabis in our community. Specifically, there is either recreational and medicinal cannabis. There's the retail sales, which are typically storefronts. There's the cultivation, which is generally done indoors in a large warehouse. There's distribution. There's the manufacturing, and then there's the testing. And as we started looking at all of these options, we felt the prudent thing to do would be come back to council to gain a better understanding of what direction council would potentially want to take a look at this. So at our May 6th meeting, we brought it before the council. What we did in the meantime is we invited David who's actually with us here this evening from HDL, where he provided a broad overview of some of the latest trends in either retail sales, cannabis, some of the different tax either measures or some of the potential revenues that could potentially be experienced here in the city should the city elect to go in this direction. At the last council meeting, council believed that the prudent thing to do would be to engage David into a contract. At the last meeting, as you're very well aware, David was at the city council. He made a presentation. The city was not under contract. We are still not under contract with David, and he did that at no cost to the city. The item this evening is to enter into a formal agreement with David and HDL to help the city prepare the proper documentation to continue on the path of potentially allowing cannabis, either sales in the city, cultivation, distribution, or I feel like I'm missing one: testing, manufacturing, distribution, cultivation, and retail sales. So I talked a little bit about this. So in anticipation of this meeting, I had David prepare a scope of work, which is attached to the staff report, which there are 5 objectives that are outlined in terms of different elements that David will take responsibility for and that he's going to assist the city prepare. So Roger discussed this very briefly, and we talked about this at our last meeting on May the 6th. But in terms of some of HDL's experiences, and as well as David's, HDL currently serves 49 counties in the state of California, which is nearly all of them. They serve 333 cities, which is roughly almost 75% of cities in the state of California, and 175 transaction tax districts. They've reviewed roughly 16,000 cannabis compliance reviews in 3 states, and they've partnered with over 150 local agencies to develop cannabis policies. As I started researching who the expert was or which company was the expert when it came to cannabis, the name that continued to come up was HDL and specifically David. So again, so the prudent thing we thought was why try to reinvent the wheel? Why try to become subject matter experts in a very short amount of time? Let's bring someone who's very well versed first, who has a good understanding and who's knowledgeable about it. So that's why I reached out to David. And on top of that, on the implementation side, they have experience with over 2,000 cannabis business applications in terms of assisting local governments evaluate those applications. So in terms of the scope of work that's attached to the staff report, there are 5 objectives. The first objective is to attend meetings, and what's discussed in the scope of work is up to 4 meetings. One of the things that David and I had discussed is because we're living in a Zoom environment right now because of COVID-19, that these forms of meetings do potentially save some funds because we're not including travel expenses. So if we continue to use Zoom, that could potentially shift some funds and really free up some funds so we could potentially have 5 meetings if needed. But really, David and I felt that a good number would be 4 meetings, and those could be 4 meetings. And we're not too sure exactly how we structure those. That's a discussion that we would want to have with council. It doesn't necessarily have to be tonight, but once, if the council approves kind of the contract, and those could be community meetings, council meetings, planning commission meetings. It's really up to the discretion of the council. The second item or the second objective would be to help the city prepare some kind of regulatory ordinance to allow different iterations of cannabis to occur in the city. And I'm saying that because we don't have it all fleshed out yet. Rather, the goal of bringing David on is to help guide the city and really to use his expertise and his experiences about different ways of structuring it. Do we allow retail sales? Do we put a hard cap on it? Are there distances to sensitive uses? For example, should we allow cannabis sales, say retail sales, within 1,500 square, say 1,500 feet of a school or daycare center? Those types of elements. Various site security measures, for example, cameras, the type of resolution that we would like, the type of lighting, the foot candles. Those are types of those are the different things that we would be looking at. Inspection and enforcement protocols. and operational procedures, and then really anything else that the council feels would be prudent to include in the ordinance. Objective number 3 would include the process in terms of how should we process these types of applications. If you take a look at the cities, there's a lot of commonalities. However, there are some nuances that each city looks at, but those are some of the things that we can really lean on David for and his expertise can to either help bounce stuff off of or to help kind of guide in the discussion to say, well, you know what, Madera, you could do this. However, here are 25 other, variations of that, or 25 options that we can also explore. Objective number 4 would be a fiscal analysis. And this would help prepare in terms of what type of cannabis tax should the city put out to the voters. We know there's a state tax, and there's a lot of communities around the city of Madera that are either currently permitting it. It's either in the pipeline or it's on the book somewhere, and different tax structures. Excuse me. So if you look at some cities, they're taxing it at 7%. There's some that are taxing it at 10. There's others that are taxing it at 4. That's a discussion that we would want to have with the council to make sure that whatever tax structure we're putting out to the voters is appropriate and the council has a comfort level with. And then also assistance. We understand that there are some things that are going to be very unique to the city of Madera. So we've also added the language in there that David and his team would provide up to 22 hours of general counsel just to help the city further the cannabis ordinance. So in terms of expenses, so this current contract is for $29,700. What is not included in the contract is either staff time, such as myself, or city attorney time, because we would continue to heavily rely on Hilda and her expertise. And right now, there is language in the contract that David would help us prepare a ballot measure to go on the general election ballot November 3rd of this year. So one of the reasons that we reached out to David quickly, and if it appears that this item is moving relatively quickly, that's because the goal, of course, is to get it on the ballot in November based on our discussion at the last council meeting. So with that, a couple of other things that I did want to highlight. There are other ways of potentially looking at the sale of cannabis or the cultivation of cannabis besides putting it on the ballot. Another alternative is to structure development agreement. There's some challenges, and there's no right or wrong. Roughly 75% of the cities use the ballot measure. Around 25% of the communities use use some form of development agreement. Development agreements are codified under state statutes, so there are some regulations per the state. One of the things that sometimes we'll hear is that development agreements could potentially be faster, and it's nuanced. In some cases, they could take longer. In some cases, they can be faster. But one key thing to remember is that if there's a delivery service that's not within the city of Madera and they deliver cannabis to the city of Madera, if it's under a development agreement, they would not be subject to whatever tax measures we impose. So, however, if there's a general tax that's approved by the voters, if someone's going to deliver cannabis within the city limits, they would be held to the same tax. And if I say that incorrectly, please feel free to jump in, either Hilda or David. But those are some of the nuances. So could the city potentially go the development agreement route? Absolutely. But we would be losing out on some tax revenue. So those are a couple of nuances. Under the structure that we're proposing this evening, the council this evening is to approve the contract only. We would come back at a very soon, and we would talk to council about putting this on the November ballot, which we would want to get over to the county really no later than the first or second week of July. The cost to put it on the ballot, based on the number of registered voters today, or actually not today, as of about 10 days ago, would run us between $85,000 and $90,000. It's a fluid number because it's all dependent on how many registered voters there are in the city. So that number, if we have more registered voters, that number would probably increase by a little bit. It's not going to double, but it's definitely going to increase. So at a future date, depending on council's action this evening, we would come back at a future date to allocate funds to get this on the ballot, and then also to make sure that we have the correct language as the council feels appropriate. So this evening, it's to approve a contract. We would come back, and the goal of putting it on the ballot, it's for the tax only. If the tax were to be approved by the community, the council, based on the last meeting, would like to run parallel tracks where at the same time we would be preparing the ballot information. Separately, but at the same time related, we would be preparing a regulatory ordinance with David's assistance. So in theory, if it were to be approved by the voters come November, at that point, the regulatory ordinance would kick in right away, or it would trail almost immediately behind it. So there's a couple of different moving pieces that we're working with here. When's the ballot for taxes, and when's the regulatory scheme? And so again, so this evening, it's to consider a contract with HDL for up to $29,700 to help the city prepare a ballot measure and to help us prepare the regulatory scheme. And then we'll come back in terms of what that looks like and some potential options so the council can help decide, or not help decide, but can decide exactly what that should look like. So with that, thank you very much. And staff's ready for staff's available if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rodriguez. And I want to make sure that we're clear and the community is clear on putting this on the ballot for November. It will be approval of a tax. It will not be a choice of a tax number. It will basically be approval of a tax that we decide based on the working with HDL and the information they provide, correct?
Correct, and that's correct, right, David? You're on mute.
Is David with us?
Yeah, he sure is. He's actually, I'm trying to unmute him.
Can you hear me, Alan?
Yes, we sure can.
Yeah, and that is correct. That is just basically to put the tax. It doesn't mean you have to move forward with the regulatory process if council chooses not to.
So hypothetically speaking, David, if we approve a particular number, or when I say we, I mean the community, as Mr. Rodriguez just pointed out, it will then immediately come back to council for approval of an ordinance by way of city council, correct?
Oh, we're talking about the regulatory or the tax ordinance?
The regulatory.
Yeah, so my understanding is that it was the staff's, council's direction to parallel them, but that the regulatory part of that will not be go into effect unless the tax measure passed, unless you decide otherwise.
Again, I just want to be clear that there might have been some confusion with some community members that watched the meeting last. They felt that it was basically, am I as a voter in the city of Madera going to be able to vote yes or no as it pertains to cannabis in the city of Madera?
So the voters would be voting on a tax. If the tax measure fails, and if it is not approved by the voters, at that point, the council would still have the discretion of approving the sale of cannabis or cultivation of cannabis or the manufacturing, or to not approve it. However, if the voters do not approve a tax, the city council would not have the option of imposing a tax. At that point, council could always have an option of a development agreement, but I would recommend that we not explore that option, because I think we're going to muddy the waters if we go down that path right now.
I would agree. I would agree. I have some other comments, but I'm going to go ahead and yield to a couple of council members that have questions, starting with Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. Arnoldo, I noticed that the estimate that you have down there for the ballot is for the tax measure. But I will remind you that we have to take into account that we do have a mayoral election and also 3 other city council elections. And that being said, being that they're going to be together in the same election, does that warrant some type of not discount, so to speak, but I mean, there's got to be something that works. And we're not necessarily just putting a specific ballot on the November election, but rather the city has other elections that are coming due as well. So I'm not sure how much more that would constitute as far as money, but you have 4 other elections here in the city aside from this tax measure.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. We have 3 city council elections.
Mayoral election?
And then, yeah, Ken, thank you. And so we are going to have numerous things on the ballot for the city of Madera. And what I'll be doing is sitting down with the county, and we'll try to get a concrete number, knowing that it's still a little fluid just because people people continue to register to vote, which is a good thing. But it simply changes the number a little bit.
Yeah, I believe the Unified District sent out for a bond measure not too long ago. Okay. And I want to say that they encompass a larger population. And I think those numbers were a lot lower than that. So I just wanted to make sure we do our due diligence on that as well.
Absolutely.
The other comment that I had to the mayor's point is that the tax measure that's going before the voters is to tax cannabis. And I think the misconception that we hear here is that we're going to be imposed a tax that we're going to pay as taxpayers, but that's not the measure that's going before the voters, but rather taxing cannabis. And Mr. McPherson, if you can expand on that just so that we're clear and there's no confusion in how this measure will be presented.
That is correct, council member. In fact, in the purpose and intent language, we put in there that this tax cannot be passed down to the consumer, the patient, caretaker, or any person. It's imposed on the business itself.
Thank you. And that's very important to make clear, is because I think people might get the misconception that, oh, here's another tax that I have to pay aside from all the other bonds and everything else. But no, this is actually a tax being imposed on businesses. And that's what we are proposing for the voters.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you, Mr. Councilman. I appreciate that. The more that we can be transparent and answer those questions now on the front end for any concern whatsoever, I think the better we're going to be off as we move forward. And speaking of moving forward, as we talk about the ballot measure, November seems like a little ways away, but we're only 3 meetings away from the middle of July to get the paperwork turned into the county. So I know time is of the essence. With that, thank you, Mr. Councilman, for raising your hand. And also Mayor Pro Tem, you too have raised your hand for a question. So I'm going to call on you next. And I will ask any of my colleagues, if you have a question, if you can do the raise your hand button, that would help me out a lot. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, I'm thinking that you're going to be quite a bit of questions lobbied your way. So if you could speak a little louder, maybe raise the volume a little bit, I think that would help. My first comment is revolving public review and transparency. I think all of us would agree that this subject is something that a lot of people will be chiming into in the near future. And I think that we all acknowledge that we will do everything in our power to fully vest this brand new project of the City Council and give everybody the opportunity to speak out and voice their concerns, because we have those very same concerns. So we will be discussing safety, transparency, the different business models that are going to come before us, what the process is to review these businesses and how they're going to operate. And my big concern is how we can have them as a new business coming into our community. How are they going to be invested in our community? What business models are they going to come in, and how are they going to contribute to our community in a positive manner? So those are the types of things that I'm going to be looking at, besides the question of cultivation and sales, etc. We've started this process actually last year. I believe it's either early February, March sometime, and we toured some facilities, and we've been meeting with representatives and looking at what the possibilities are. So this has taken quite a bit of our time, kind of in the back burner kind of way. But I think that I'm very happy that we're going to have this process go forward, and we can look at what the possibilities are. My question is mostly on the taxing, or it's called, I believe you called it a development agreement. I want to make sure that we fully understand what that means. What I've heard is a flexibility in the rate that we charge companies, whereas if we set a tax in November, that's we can adjust it unless we make another move to changing that. And I don't know what that would mean. So an adjustment of tax, I think I've seen other communities tax at a certain rate, and they've been very high, and they haven't been able to get the job done, which is creating more revenue for a city because they're taxing the companies coming in at such a high rate. Now, the adverse can be true also, where they're taxing too low, or they have agreements that are too low. So I'm very interested in that aspect of the agreements. And then the last one being the ballot measure. You stated that 25% of the municipalities that have made agreements have been taking the route of the development agreement as opposed to the ballot measure. So those are the types of things that I'm very interested in having you explain to us fully so that we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate those comments. Councilman Derek Robinson.
Actually, that was a question for David. There's a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I can repeat it, but I'm thinking I want to talk about the agreements. That's what I want to look at, and the pros.
Sure, I just want to be careful because tonight is the approval of the contract, and then as we move forward, we're going to get into the weeds and the nuts and bolts. I just may be saving Hilda from saying that, but I'll certainly give David an opportunity to address that.
Thank you, Mayor. If I just on a high picture, I think all the issues you brought up are valid issues and discussions, and I think as we present you information and options, it's going to be a little more clear and defined to address all the issues that you just mentioned. And I think you'll be pretty happy with the information we provide you to give you options for consideration.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Councilman Robinson. Is he with us? Councilman Robinson?
He's on mute.
You hear me now?
Yes, we can.
You hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I reached out to Councilman Francisco Ramirez from the city of Hanford, and he was telling me that they have a clause that the cannabis business must pay for the salaries of at least 2 police officers, as well as taxes also. And also I was thinking about the lottery. When it came out, they said they were going to support the school, fund the schools, and we see how that happened, what happened to that. But also they had a big explosion down in Los Angeles. One of the cannabis business just blew up. I don't know if they were making, processing, marijuana or whatever. But, you have to think about the danger of what type of products they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And the ad hoc committee actually spoke on that particular subject. As we move forward and we communicate with the community, it's very, very important that we discuss how those revenues may be spent. And I think we had a brief discussion at the last council meeting as we talk about the needs for parks, the needs for public safety, and so on and so forth. So I think as we move forward, we will certainly define what those needs are as we talk to the community and listen to them, so that they know exactly where these revenues can be spent, and we definitely want to hear from them. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Rodriguez.
I'll make one final comment. I think it was last meeting or the meeting before that, Mr. Sanchez had presented us with some devastating numbers there in regards to our sales tax revenues that we would normally get, but throughout the midst of this pandemic, obviously we lost some revenues, and we're anticipating on possibly losing more revenues. So this gives us a good opportunity for us to bring something to life that can actually generate these revenues that supplement. I'm not saying that'll supplement the full amount of revenues that we lose, but certainly a positive, a net in our general fund, and just remind the council that that is the intention of why this ad hoc committee wanted to bring this forward to the council and hopefully bring it forward to the voters so that we can take advantage of some of these opportunities presented before us. So I just wanted to share those comments. And again, I'm in full support of moving forward and looking forward to answer the questions that both Councilmember Derek Robinson and Councilmember Garcia brought. I think those are good points that we should touch on. And like you said, Mayor, be very transparent with our community so they understand and there's no misinformation going out there. Thank you again.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. And one last comment from myself as well, as we talk about investment and investing in the community and finding any ways to increase revenue for our city. I think the contract before us and the price that is being offered to us is a fair price. What we get in return from HDL is certainly, in my opinion, worth every bit of that. And I just want to say thank you to HDL for the information so far. The free information, if you will, and the last couple of council meetings being with us and answering our questions so far. So as we talk about the almost $30,000, I think what we get in return as we talk about revenues for our city, it's well worth it. So if there are no comments via email or any other council comments, I will call for action on item D6.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item D6 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by Councilwoman Gallegos to approve item D6. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
For the record, Alicia, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hawley?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Montes?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Councilmember Gallegos?
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson?
No.
Mayor Magellan?
Yes.
Final vote, 6 yes, 1 no, motion passes.
Thank you so much for that, Alicia. I appreciate it. Thank you, council members, and also members from HDL. Thank you so very, very much for being with us this evening. We look forward to working with you and moving this forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Good night.
Good evening. Moving on to our admin reports. Item E1, this is a report from the Madera County Economic Development Commission, the quarterly update. Mr. Khan, thank you so much for your patience. A whole lot sooner than the last time I think you were before us. You didn't have to wait too terribly long.
Yeah, we got on at 7:45 instead of 10 o'clock. So you guys are doing me well. Right. Okay, I'm going to hopefully get this opened up for you. Need to move that. I apologize.
No worries.
Okay. Sorry, this is my first time of having to do a Zoom and share my own screen. Usually I'm looking at other people's screen. So again, thank you. This is Bobby Kahn, Executive Director of Madera County Economic Development Commission, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening to give you just a brief update. We're going to just cover a few things. I want to keep it short, but also we'll be happy to answer any questions. But we want to cover some project updates, some county projects. I know Mayor Pro Tem requested that we show some of the activities we do outside the city limits. Then we want to just touch on some of the things that are going to keeping us very busy lately, which is the COVID activities and resources, and then be happy to take your questions. So just some updates on what's going on around the city of Madera. Miles Chemical, they were approved for a conditional use permit at the April 14th Planning Commission meeting. And Miles will be using Madera. It's a critical component to their new business model. And I'm not sure what happened there, but
I've just shared my screen. Can everyone see Bobby's PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, it kind of froze mine though.
Yeah, Bobby, we could not see your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so what Alicia did is she's going to share your PowerPoint with the team. So if you can just let her know, she'll try to follow along if that's okay.
Okay, so if I could get to the next slide, Alicia, I apologize for you not being able to see the screen. So if I could have the next slide, please.
Sure.
Okay, as I was discussing, Miles will be using Madera as their central hub for Central California. And we're hoping that they are successful because they do have some initial plans that are not concrete at this time, but the hope is that they will be adding on some substantial facilities in the near future, say within the next couple of years. The next item that we want to just touch on is the Starbucks at Rancho San Miguel. That will be a new Starbucks. They are in the final stages of getting that opened. It will have a drive-through component. That shopping center, the center that the Starbucks is in the same center as Rancho San Miguel on Yosemite Avenue. That center was recently sold about not quite a year ago to David Lucas, a broker out of San Francisco that I've had a long relationship. He and his partner bought that center, and so they've been very aggressive in seeking new tenants. And Starbucks will be one of their newest ones. The Vallarta project, I know you've heard about that. It's been under construction. This is just a recent picture I took last week. The tenant improvements are well underway. As you can see, well, it's kind of difficult to see. That's the front entrance of the store. You can see a little white light in the back. That's where they're actually working inside the store, and they're getting ready to tear the roof off if they haven't torn it off already, to start doing some roof repairs and putting a new roof on. But they're working away very quickly. They will be coming before the Planning Commission to submit a conditional use permit for their standard sign package. And they will be spending, I think I've covered this with you, they'll be spending over $10 million on tenant improvements and site upgrades for that site. So that, if you've been out there just recently, it's an eyesore for the city of Madera, and this is going to be a welcome improvement for that area of town. Next slide, please. This Span Development, they are ready to start their second spec building, which will look exactly like this building, which is the spec building they just completed. And we want to thank city staff. We had a little bit of an issue with the sewer rate because it is a spec building. The city assesses the sewer rate at the maximum. So we were able to negotiate, if you would, or reach an agreement would probably be a better term with the city, that instead of them having to pay all this money up front and then not have the impact on the sewer, that we will assess that fee at the time of a permit, and that way we'll know what type of use is in there and the rate can be set appropriately. Next slide, please. Continued with Freedom Industrial Park. Trampac is now complete and has moved in and have started operations. I have had some calls with them over the last several weeks, just with some minor little details that we had to clean up for them or help them navigate their way around the city. The premium bottled water operations and productions are starting, and U.S. Water, which is actually a chemical company, they have limited operations pending final PG&E meter installation. And I want to take this opportunity again to thank Steve Woodworth for helping them get started with a startup stage without their PG&E meter being set. So Steve really stepped up and helped them. It was critical to them to start being able to use some of the insides of the building. And so again, your staff came through and it was flying colors on that. Full Throttle Construction, which is out across the street from your new fire station. The foundation has been poured, so I think you'll start seeing some additional work happening quickly, and you'll start seeing the building starting to take shape. Next slide, please. Some of the county projects that we just wanted to touch on quickly. I'm not going to go into all the details on these because there's quite a few and we'll be here a long time if we did, but feel free to ask me any questions about any particular item that you may have. But we've worked on several over the last couple of years. The conference center up at Oakhurst with their incentive package that we negotiated with the county. We're working currently with Ducey's on a pretty major expansion for them, a travel theater center. I don't want you to think that this is like a movie theater. This is kind of a travel center that will have a in-house theater that features films, high definition films of Yosemite. The Easy Trip out on Avenue 12. The Riverwalk is the commercial section of Riverstone. That groundbreaking took place a couple months ago. We've been working over this last several years with Avenue 7 with SPAN on a possible industrial park out there. We've had starts and stops on that, and so it's been kind of just inching along, but it's still out there. Also, we've worked with some people on a sports complex out in the Madera Ranchos, actually closer to Rolling Hills. They bought some property out there, but they haven't been moving forward. They are hoping their long-range plan is some type of soccer facility. And then the Austin Quarry, if you've been out towards 145 and 41, out just east of the Bondelli Ranchos on the south side of the road, you probably see a lot of construction. We get a lot of questions about that. That's the Austin Quarry that was approved by the Board of Supervisors a couple years ago. Next slide, please. Going on to the COVID, there's been just a lot of action on that. I think Sarah gave you a good update today on where we are, so I won't go into that and be redundant. But we could see right away that there's going to be a need. So we started a Facebook page. It jumped up to 950 followers just in a couple weeks. What we've been able to do is field questions from people over Facebook and answer questions that way, as well as provide information. We've also started a business resource page and a worker resource page on our website, so people can go there, and we're constantly updating that with new information. The mayor had a COVID-19 roundtable webinar that we participated in. We're on the daily calls with the Madera County Health Department to keep track of the number of cases and any changes in any policies that may be taking place. We have daily seminars with the Small Business Administration on different programs. And I don't know, I lost the screen there. Okay. We've also have webinars with the California Manufacturers and Technology Associations. We sit in with the calls with the Madera Community Hospital, the Workforce Investment Board, and I've been sitting in with the bi-weekly webinars with GoBiz, which is the Governor's Office of Economic Development. Next slide, please. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I know it was short and to the point, but we did want to be respectful of your time and give you an opportunity to ask any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you very much. And to your team as well. I know Lois and Julie are really coming through and also participating in quite a few of these meetings as well. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is actually a question for Arnoldo. Could we go back to the sewer rate, the adjustable sewer rate out at the industrial park?
Yeah, it was probably about 5 slides back, Alicia, if you don't mind. Keep going back.
Right.
Forward.
One forward. That one. Whoop, one back. Right there.
Thank you.
So how does this work? It's a questions that I have. How does this work? So a potential buyer comes in, and then he's going to pull permits, or is it how does that work?
Yes. Were you finished with your question?
Yeah, I kind of messed it up, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
I do. I've got it. Okay, what it is in this particular case is most of the time when you're building a building, you know what's going to go into it. Take Trampac, for example. We knew what Trampac did, and we knew what their sewer impact on the sewer that they would have. So the city was able to give them a rate that was not as severe because their impact on the sewer plant was more of a commercial impact rather than a heavy commercial where you're sending a lot of water down. Now the issue that we have with the spec building is we really don't know who's going to go in there. So the initial permit fee had the highest fee set for that because we don't know, the city in their defense, they don't know what's going to go in there. So what SPAN, of course, objected because the rate was very high. And so we met with the city staff and we agreed that we'd set that fee at tenant improvement. So they build this building spec. So it's basically a shell. And then when they lease out the space, then they do what they call tenant improvements, or they do the improvements inside the building for the tenant. But they need to pull an additional building permit at that stage. So the city still has, oversight at that particular stage of the development. So now they know what the use will be, and they can assess the sewer rate for the appropriately consistent with the use that's being proposed for the building. If that answered the question.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Arnoldo.
Yes.
Potentially, other folks are going to come into Madera and ask for the same break for theirs. Is this something that will set precedent, or how's that going to work?
So, one of the things that we did with this specific building is we provided them the fee structure. They filed a formal appeal. And then what we did is we considered the appeal and determined that because they don't have a user, they're building a speculative building, which means they're going to build a building without a tenant in mind. And at that point, once tenants are identified, they come in, they inform us of who the tenant is as part of their plans. We review it, and then we calculate how much water usage and drainage usage they're going to have. Moving forward, I think the prudent thing to do on large industrial buildings when you don't know who the tenant is, it's not very common that people build 35,000 square foot buildings without a tenant in mind already. And at that point, we would go through a similar process. They would appeal the city's fee, which in this case, they appealed it. We went through a process, and at that point, we determined that it would be appropriate. And we feel like we have enough steps in the process to ensure that nothing gets by us. That's always the concern. So in terms of it being equitable, I think it's very equitable, I think, to the city, because we're not missing it on any funds. And I think it's fair in terms of the developers, because at the same time, they're not putting up a bunch of money, which quite frankly, they don't know who their tenant is. Which again, it's not very common to have buildings of 35,000 square foot, 35,000 square feet constructed without having an idea of exactly who's going to go in there. In this case, they're building the buildings without a tenant, so we thought that it was appropriate to consider that. But in terms of potentially losing revenues, I'm absolutely confident that we have enough steps in place in our system to make sure that we're charging the appropriate fee before there's a tenant in the building. So before they occupy and before they're in operation, every space is going to be taken a look at as part of our process, and we'll be sure that we capture those dollars. So in other words, no one's going to get a free ride.
Well said.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions of Mr. Khan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilman Rodriguez.
This is more in relation to the COVID-19 and small businesses. Bobby, I understand that you're also working with the businesses going through some issues with the pandemic and all. Can you expand on that a bit on where these people can actually seek for resources?
Yes. What we've been doing is we've been studying all the processes ourselves, so that when small businesses call, or in many cases the cities referred them over to us and they call then too, we help them with the process. For example, a lot of them were calling for the payroll protection program or paycheck protection program, and at the onset, to be quite honest with you, SBA pushed it out so fast, a lot of lenders weren't ready. There was a lot of confusion, and then the funds were encumbered very rapidly. So a lot of businesses were confused. The banks wouldn't take their applications. So we met separately. I had a separate call with Deputy Director in Fresno. So they walked us through what was going to happen within the next couple of days. So we've been able to advise all these businesses. For example, if you're a small business and you go to your bank for a PPP loan or an EIDL loan, and they tell you that they don't have any more funding, there is a location on the SBA website that we send them to where you can click on that and it says find a lender, and then you click on that and you put in your zip code, and then it will drop down lenders in your immediate area that are still taking applications and that will take people outside their own clients for these projects. So we've been able to help them in a variety of different ways. We've had a lot of different conversations with them. Some of them have been more sophisticated than others. I know Councilmember Montez referred someone to me, and I called her. She was quite, we had a robust discussion, and she was quite aware of all the programs and how they work. So we just kind of bounced ideas off of each other, and so we had a good long discussion on next steps for her. But we have been helping countless businesses try to navigate the steps. And the one thing that's not on here, because we're just in the process of doing it, but so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we are working with the city now to develop a new COVID-19 small business assistance program that would be administered by us on behalf. It would be a city program administered by us, so that you guys don't have to use staff time over there. But we would handle it similar to the way we handle your revolving loan fund.
Well, thank you, Bobby. Appreciate the information. I know that as businesses start opening up, some might not be able to make payroll due to some burdens that they've had over the last couple of months. But it's good to know that there are certainly outlets out there, and the EDC is doing all they can in providing those resources. So I appreciate that. I'm not sure if there's any additional outreach. I know certain businesses, first thing they do is they will call the city, and I think Arnoldo is referring them over to you. So I appreciate that. if there's any additional outreach that can be done, for these businesses, a lot of them are unaware that there is some type of funding and assistance for them as well. So thanks again for the effort.
We're happy to help, and feel free to refer anyone that has an issue. If we don't have the answer, we'll dig it out for them.
Yes, you will, Bobby. Thanks very much. And I'm going to touch on that, Councilman Rodriguez, about next steps and how we can help those small businesses. So thank you very much for that. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia has a question, Bobby.
Yeah, I just wanted to say ask a question really quick. Don't we have a loan process in place that that you participate in with the city?
Yes, we administer your revolving loan fund. The reason why we are looking to develop a new fund through some of the CARES money that the city is receiving is the guidelines of the revolving loan fund require that you create new jobs. And in this environment, it's very difficult for a business to apply for a loan and saying they're going to create new jobs. Now, you can use job retention, but it's a little bit trickier, and then they have to make sure that they don't have any layoffs, and most of the businesses right now don't want to commit to the fact that if where they are now, or even in this phase 2.5, that they're not going to wind up laying anybody off. So that kind of disqualifies them from the revolving loan fund. Therefore, we're looking to this new program. The loan amounts will be much smaller, but it will be much easier for the businesses to access the funds.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And these are certain times right now. Small businesses are struggling. There's a lot of uncertainty about what's going on right now. I can appreciate that, but being able to retain employees that we've laid off and bring them back using some of these government funds, I think that it would be a good idea and a good use of these funds to retain folks that have been laid off. So I'm not saying that we're thinking out of the box here. I'm looking at not mixing them, but not to have to create a whole new program in order to run that we already have in place. If that makes any sense to you.
Well, it does, but you're kind of cutting in and out. But anyway, it does from a practical standpoint. The problem that we're faced is that the revolving loan funds is federal money, and so we have to abide by the federal guidelines. And the federal guidelines say you have to have job creation or guarantee job retention in order to qualify for the loan. We don't have the ability to change those guidelines. If we could, we were hoping through the CARES Act that they might relax those guidelines, but they did not.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else have any questions of Mr. Khan? Bobby, thanks again. And we appreciate your participation in the community. And again, your team at the EDC, thank them both for us. We really appreciate their help.
No problem. Thank you. And have us be safe and stay well, all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Moving on to item E2, this is a discussion on status and action taken on measures to mitigate the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the council. Arnoldo Rodriguez, the city manager. A brief update because Sarah earlier provided a status update in terms of Madera County moving into stage 2.5 in terms of reopening as outlined by Governor Newsom. That occurred earlier today. In terms of funding, we did submit an application for approximately $100,000 for CARES funding, and that's specific to first responders. As the council is very well aware, we brought the item of up to $6.6 million of transit funds. Transit fares continue to be free, so if there are community members who would like to use our buses, those buses right now are free to travel on. So if someone has not had the experience of riding the bus, it's a great opportunity because it's free and it's a good experience. In terms of potential funding, as the council is probably aware, the lower house has approved a new CARES package. That CARES package would provide a rather substantial amount of funds to our community. There are some funds that would go to the city in terms of the government city. There are a lot of funds to a lot of community members. My understanding is that the Senate is not enthusiastic about considering it at this point. And my understanding is that they will not consider it until sometime in June, if they consider it at all. So at this point, we are operating under the understanding that we are not going to receive additional funds. And the reason I say that is because no additional funds have been allocated to the city. Besides the transit dollars, the $69,000 for the airport, the roughly $100,000 for first responders, and the CDBG funds, the Community Block Development Grant funds that we discussed at our last meeting. The deadline for that application is Friday, so it's May the 22nd, and Yvette's on the line. Yvette, if you can confirm that for me, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, it is. Applications for the COVID funding, the CDBG COVID funding is due this Friday. And again, the proposals have to address one of the priority areas that the council decided, which was assistance, rental assistance, mortgage assistance, utility billing assistance, or food distribution, or small business support. So they have to be submitting a project, a program that will address one of those priority areas.
Okay, and that information is found on our website, correct, Yvette?
I don't believe it was put on the website for this one. It was a really fast-paced process, but all of the recipients were informed of the applications. All of the individuals that, all of the agencies that typically receive our information have been notified.
Okay, so again, so that is Friday, and then the block commission is going to consider this. Is it at a meeting next week, Yvette?
They're looking at making decisions and recommendations for council on Thursday, May 28th.
Okay, so roughly about a week from today or from tomorrow, the commission is going to review it, and their recommendations are going to come to council for formal action. So again, the city is eligible for roughly $538,000, and the council has discretion in terms of how to allocate those funds. So besides that, we have experienced an uptick in terms of positive cases this week. We understand that Memorial Day is coming up this weekend, and with us moving into a new new period in terms of the stage we're on, I would simply caution our community members to stay safe. I would be conservative in terms of making sure that you're following social distancing. Today as well, the city, based on council direction at our meeting of May 6th, we did publish a letter in today's Tribune thanking our community members for their efforts, and we also thanked a lot of our community partners because this has been challenging times, I think, for a lot of people, including city staff. And so with that, we simply want to say thank you. Also, city services have gone uninterrupted this entire time. So there has been zero interruptions to city services, even though our facilities have been closed down to the public. We remain open, and I would strongly encourage anyone in our community, if they need assistance, we're available by email, by phone. We are still processing applications. We've added numerous drop boxes in front of City Hall, and we try to respond to our community members as soon as we possibly can to make sure that they don't feel that there's no one home. So while the doors at City Hall are locked, we We continue to come to work. We are still encouraging our employees to telecommute when possible, because we simply want to be sure that we're being smart about it and we're protecting our employees, because it goes back to our most important asset are our employees, and we simply want to be smart about that. So we are going to continue that practice. Again, there's been no disruption in city services. And I think one of the reasons why there's been no disruptions in city services is because we've been prudent and we've taken the necessary steps to make sure that our employees are protected. And I simply want to be sure that we continue that practice. So with that, I will turn it over back to the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez. Any questions of Yvette or our city manager regarding this report? I have a question of Yvette. You had mentioned the applications are due this Friday for those seeking assistance with those topics that council had directed. There will be no mention, or is there any mention of requested amount or what's available or how much money each applicant may be able to receive?
So they can't exceed the funding available, which is the $500,000. There is no minimum, but they obviously shouldn't be exceeding what is available.
Okay, I understand your answer, but if I'm going to put an application, am I going to be required to put an amount?
Yes.
And that amount, if I am the only one if I have for instance, a food disbursement, and I'm the only one that applies under that particular heading, is there an assumption that I will get 25% of the funding, or does this come back to the
Block Grant Commission?
the advisory board that we have?
Right. So assuming that there's one application and they submit an application for $537,000, they're the only applicant, then the Block Grant Commission would make a determination if they would want to recommend that to council or extend the application timeline and receive more applicants.
Okay. And the deadline is this Friday, and you have sent the information to all parties. Have you gotten any replies, any questions? And what I'm getting at, Yvette, is I want to move as quickly as possible. My question last time was, how soon can we get relief for people? But I just want to be sure that there's enough people who know about it and are made aware about this application, the application process. Is it in Spanish? Is there a question and answer portion for people who may not be able to fill it out completely?
So at this point, we have received questions from EDC. My understanding is that they are developing a proposal to support the small businesses in Madera. And other than that, I am not aware of other organizations developing applications at this point.
Okay, I'm not sure if I can discuss it now or maybe under council member reports. I do want to report on the meeting that Bobby talked about, the webinar that I had, and quite possibly a future webinar. I'll discuss that a little bit later, but right now Mayor Pro Tem Garcia has a question. Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you, Mayor. You did ask the question that I had. Well, I wanted to try to get a sense of urgency here, in the sense that there are very limited funds being doled out by the federal government, and we have such great needs that I don't see a sense of urgency in trying to make sure that we have applications. Now, we do have till Friday, but that's not a whole lot of time to put a proposal together.
Right.
So the applications were released over a week ago. So prospects did have over 2 weeks to develop their proposals, and they've known about it. The public, I mean, they've been informed. The applications were just not released, but because we wanted to identify the priority areas and we needed council's direction on that. After that, we gave applicants 2 weeks.
Is Do you have any sense of that there might be an extension of any kind for the deadline, or is that pretty much set in stone?
We can extend it based upon the number that are received. We have a meeting already scheduled with the Block Grant Commission on May 28th. So if they determine that we didn't receive sufficient applications, we never have a shortage of applicants. So for the action plan, those were already received, and we have about $911,000 to allocate, and the total ask is well over 1.5 million. So organizations in the community are aware of the application process. They know our application. We've never received fewer requests than the amounts available. So I don't foresee that this time there would be a small number of applicants. So we're excited to receive some applications, and we'll take them before the Block Grant Commission on the 28th. And based on the recommendation, we'll bring that to council. We're expecting to bring that to council on June 17th.
I'm not sure if this is the right question, but let's say that so far we've only gotten one application, or we anticipate one application. If we don't have more than one application for Friday, how do we make a determination of extending the application process? How do we do that?
Well, it sounds like council would be willing to extend it. So I will definitely discuss it with our city manager and get some direction from him as well. This will be discussed at the Block Grant Commission. But nevertheless, the staff, we can extend the deadline if need be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for those questions. I think we're kind of seeing things the same way. Normally with CDBG funding, and we send it out to our partners and those entities that have worked with us in the past, that seems to work just fine. Mm-hmm. But in this particular case, we're actually talking about individuals. When council directed a couple of weeks ago for eviction relief and mortgage relief and utility relief, these aren't necessarily entities, they're individuals. And so where we're assuming that the people we reach out to are informing those people, I just want to be sure that we are really getting this information out to those individuals, those families, those homeowners or renters or people having a difficult time as quickly as possible. And so what I was going to bring it up at a council report, but I want to bring it up now. We had a pretty successful webinar Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago with Mayor Pro Tem and our city manager and chief of police. And I'm going to suggest we do the same thing sooner rather than later so that we can get the information out to all parties interested. I've had some people watch the council meeting and they asked, is this going to be online? City Hall is closed. How can I apply so that I can help my small business? So we just may have to do a good old fashioned door-to-door grassroots reach out to our community and use every means possible. Because I agree, time is of the essence. And hopefully we get more applicants that we don't have to push this off so that we can get these approved and get money into people's hands. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have something to add?
I just want to remind folks, a lot of these institutions that are going to be making the applications and working with our communities, they're closed down too, because if you become a non-essential institution and you're closed down, it makes it that much harder for you to do what you got to do. So I just remind folks that everyone is being impacted across the board, and not having staff on board or being able to communicate quickly. So that is impacting our community too.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have one. Yes.
Yes, sir. Councilman Hawley.
This money that we got from the government, is that different from the money that we get normally from HUD for
Yes, it's a separate amount. It's still coming from HUD through the CDBG program, but it's a different allocation. So it's on top of the 900,000 that we're expecting for this coming year. It's an additional $500,000 on top of that.
So all that's stowed off into one pot. That means people get to apply the same way, or is this two separate entities that we can apply for?
Yeah, so it's different processes, similar processes, but two separate application cycles. So the one for the 900,000, those applications have already been received. And this one's, the ones for the CARES, the CDBG CARES allocation, those have to particularly address those 4 priority needs. And that's the one that is due this Friday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Any other comments from council? Thank you very much. Mr. Rodriguez, was that all you had on this particular item?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, I'll move into council reports, and I'll start with Councilman Robinson.
He's probably on mute.
He is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I was thinking we might have to be on Zoom, you know, until our finances get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seemed like it, you know, because 90% of the California cities, you know, they are having difficulties, and because of COVID and CalPERS being underfunded, you know, liability. So we have to start doing more cost cutting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilwoman Gallegos.
Yes, I'd just like to thank staff on writing that letter that went out to our community on behalf of council and the mayor of the city of Madera. It was a beautiful letter, and I think that they've been waiting to hear from us. So thank you for putting that time and effort. I appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you, Thank you, Councilwoman. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
During this difficult time, we need to remember that we have folks in our community who have lost their jobs, have some are in danger of being evicted in the future. The essential folks that are going to work right now, a lot of them are being exposed to the virus because people just refuse to wear a mask or any kind of protective covering. I would just ask the community to do a bit more. When I go out into the community, I have masks in my car, and I've even tried to walk into City Hall one day, and I forgot. I said, "Oh my God, I got to go picture my car and get my mask because I had left it in there." But I worry that we'll open up the swap meet, we'll open up the drive-in, and all these other things. And I know people want to get back to work. I know that we're being hurt financially, but I just would ask people to give pause and not only protect themselves and their family, but the families of folks who are out there doing the job every day and that we're walking up to. So I just ask for, as we begin opening up a little bit more, I just would ask people to be careful and do the best they can to use some type of protective covering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Hawley.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. I just wanted to touch on Councilmember Robinson's concern regarding the CalPERS unfunded liability. If we can get something from Roger, maybe in the future, if council agrees, future meeting, maybe to bring back something on how the unfunded liability is affecting California, especially more specifically our city, and maybe look at some numbers that we as a council can look at. Secondly, I attended the MCTC meeting today alongside with our mayor, and there was some concern about the latest high-speed rail authority's business plan and potentially derailing some funding from the Central Valley. So they are asking for some public officials and some members of our region to speak out and maybe some in the public comment. I believe this is going to be held on May 27th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, but there's additional information. Arnoldo, I would ask if the council would agree to possibly provide a letter of support through the city council. But first and foremost, I'd ask that you get that information from our MCTC director to confirm that the date and when we can provide some public some comment or a letter of support in regards to that.
Will do.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Montes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, I know COVID-19 is affecting everybody different ways. This one's a little bit closer to home. I just wanted to give a shout out to my nephew, Jonathan Montes. He's graduating from Hanford Christian School. Couldn't go to graduation, and they had their online graduation. Actually, it was today, so I couldn't go. So shout out to Jonathan. Congratulations, graduating in the 8th grade. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's comments. And as I mentioned before, the last council meeting, I had asked for support from council to have a community Zoom meeting or a webinar. And I really want to thank Alicia as well. In a short amount of time, she was able to help rustle up about 30 or so community members. EDC was part of it, the workforce investment. We had a number of restaurants and small businesses, even a barber was with us, a couple of gym owners, and so on and so forth. And it was a very, very productive meeting. And as our city manager has been saying, our community is thirsty for information. And although we did not have all the answers, I think it was very, very informative. The members that participated were very, very appreciative that we stay connected with those members. Sarah Boss did a fantastic job, but really our city manager and our chief of police did an outstanding job in relaying their support for the community, as well as always letting our community know that there's a lifeline at City Hall. So I want to thank everybody for that. And that being said, as we had just talked about a little bit ago with this funding, I would like the same support from council and be a little more specific to our community, and that we put together another Zoom meeting and reach out to these folks and let them know that there's monies available. There are so many small businesses out there that have really felt the effects of this COVID-19, especially those where their employees are considered low income or very low income. They want to get back to work, and anything will help pay the rent. The PPP program, as Bobby has mentioned, has been very, very difficult, and I can attest to that. I myself, as a small business owner, went online, and it's not easy. It takes a lot of work, and I was on the computer for hours. So I would really like to reach out to those people and those partners and those entities that can help spread the word, and hopefully sooner rather than later. So if council will support me and the same cast and crew, maybe not our chief of police, but maybe Yvette can help join us and answer questions and reach out to those community members and spread the word that although $536,000, it may not go a long way, but in all honesty, a couple $1,000s for a barbershop right now could be the difference between staying open and closing its doors, or for a beauty salon, or so on and so forth, or maybe even a gym down the road. And then also with Bobby's recap, he mentioned a lot of great things that are happening in the city of Madera. And I know council and staff know this. And I want to be sure our community is full aware. Places like Full Throttle, that's still being built, and our fire station that just cannot wait for a ribbon cutting. Vallarta, the old Mervyn's building was abandoned for so long, and now we're going to have a couple hundred jobs in just a few months away. Tranpac is already open, and that's a 60,000 square foot building that all of us couldn't wait to do the ribbon cutting. So we have a lot to continue to celebrate and be thankful for in our community with the jobs that we do have. But let's really reach out to those in need and are desperate for any kind of assistance right now. And that's all I have. I want to thank council for staying connected to all your constituency, and I too want to thank staff. Although City Hall is closed, we are still open for business, and things that we may take for granted, like having our garbage picked up on a weekly basis, having maintenance workers out making our parks and landscape medians look beautiful, and being able to pay your bill online or with the drop boxes, and still continuing business as usual during this very, very difficult time. So thank you all so very, very much. That's all I have. And so with that, I will ask Hilda to make an announcement for closed session.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You have two items on the agenda. One is conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, one parcel APN 012-043-003, agency negotiator Keith Helmuth, negotiating party Gus's Food Locker, a partnership of Augustine Sambueso Jr. and Donald Sambueso, under negotiations, price, and terms. And then we have threat to public services or facilities, Government Code Section 54957A, consultation with city manager, city attorney, and chief of police.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will adjourn to closed session.
Mayor, the council met in closed session. All members were present. There is no reportable action.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you tomorrow evening for a special CIP meeting.
Good night.
Have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.